Hi, Sage. Welcome to the show. It is so nice to have you here.
Thank you so much for having me. It's a pleasure to be here with you.
Yeah, I'm so happy to finally meet you, or I should say, quote unquote, meet you, right? This way.
Right.
Yeah. So, let's see. There's so much to get into, and I'm so excited because I'll be honest, once I got wind of you and Addictive Wellness and the company and all that, and I heard the word chocolate, I was like, sign me, sign me up, literally sign me up, because that is just, it's my, right down my alley. But there is just so much more we're going to talk about, including adaptogens and all that. But before we get into it, can you just enlighten us a little bit on like how this all started for you? Because I feel like there's a little bit of a backstory here.
Yeah. About almost maybe a little more than 20 years of backstory, and I'll try to do it in a shorter time than the 20-year
The
story time.
20 years.
So when I was growing up, I had the good fortune to have parents who were already relatively health interested. They were feeding us, my brothers and I, mostly organic foods, and we were raised on a vegetarian diet for better or for worse, maybe sometimes lacking in nutritional density. It was kind of like 5 nights a week of basmati rice and tofu, and then maybe one night a week of pizza and one night of pasta. So, if I could travel back in time, I would maybe make some adjustments, but it was way better than McDonald's and Burger King 7 nights a week, which so many people had to deal with growing up. But I felt as I was going through sports and school that I was doing pretty good. I was a high performer both in sports and academics, but there was always kind of this upper echelon, this higher 10% of people that I wasn't able to quite break into in both worlds. And I always felt like I had the inner potential, but something, maybe an input was missing. Maybe I didn't have some knowledge. And but I wondered, like, is it the food? Because I knew growing up, I'm on this vegetarian diet that I don't know anybody else who eats like me. Is this a factor? I don't know. It was always kind of in the back of my head. And then my parents, when I was a teenager, they opened a wellness center in Southern California. And so they had, like, in the early 2000s, way before it was cool, they had infrared saunas and infrared heated jade massage beds, and they were selling some like supplement and superfood type products. And so I got exposed to this stuff very early.
Wow.
And I would see these people coming in, and they would have, back pain, neck pain, some sort of autoimmune disease or prostate issues, whatever it may be. And I would see them using the tools there and having major improvements in their health and having these transformations. And I was also being exposed now to this, I guess you could say, Eastern concept of prevention rather than waiting and getting sick and looking for a cure. Now, I realize that's not what these people were doing, though. They were taking a holistic route at this stage of their life, which was great, but they had neglected their health in one form or another, and then were using a holistic cure to try to fix it. But I was thinking, okay, these people waited until age 40, 50, 60 to start working on their health and then took a natural route and got great results. What happens if you get onto doing all these things that they're doing now as a teenager, before you've really experienced any kind of aging, before any disease has found you? What happens in terms of your longevity, your ability to be fit and healthy for many more years? My love has always been surfing. I was thinking, okay, most surfers maybe peak in their late 20s, early 30s, and it's kind of a slow decline for, the next 40 or 50 years of life after that, and then you stop surfing eventually. I was thinking, okay, what if my surfing peak can happen later? What if I can continue improving until 40 or 50 and really extend that out and then surf until maybe 90 or 100, or who knows? And what could this mean for my longevity and my overall ability to just have an awesome life experience? And so I was starting to, take saunas as a 17-year-old. I was getting into all this stuff, and um, I was feeling pretty good from it. And then this gentleman from the local community came into the business, and he had made this superfood blend, which was like hemp protein, spirulina, chlorella, some other Western herbs like milk thistle, for example. And until this point, I hadn't seen an example, like a real life example of what I had in mind for myself. And this guy was in incredible shape, super smart, successful businessman, obviously. And he was in his 40s, looks like he could have been in his late 20s. He was not showing any visible signs of aging. And I was learning from him that he was consuming this superfood mix as 2 meals of his day. And I thought, okay, I want to test this out. Let me do what he's doing, see what kind of results I can get. And after a period of just a few weeks, I was making these smoothies and I didn't really know what I was doing. I was just blending this up with like some or Tropicana orange juice and some frozen fruit. And it tasted like absolute dirt. But I didn't care. I didn't care. I was ready to turn off my taste buds in pursuit of what I saw as the results that I wanted. And I would just take a straw, put the straw way to the back of my mouth, and just suck the whole thing down and try not to taste it.
Oh my gosh.
And I would start feeling this amazing high. I would just feel this incredible clarity. And this is something I had never experienced before.
Mm.
And this got me to thinking, if I've been missing out on this all this time, what else have I been missing out on? And this got me to researching and learning more about the body, more about nutrition, and some of these amazing sources of nutrition and medicinal herbs and things of that nature. And the more I would learn, the more new things I would incorporate. The more I would incorporate, the better I would feel. The better I would feel, the more excited I would get to learn more. And it just started this cycle that really continued until today. But it got to a point where you can only do something like this that's really beneficial for your own life for so long before naturally you want to share it with others. It's the natural hero's journey. You slay your own personal dragon, you come back to your place of origin, and you want to share the spoils and the wisdom gained and stories with everybody else. So the challenging thing was that in this case, everybody else was my college friends. I didn't quite know what to do about that because this is like height of the prescription painkiller epidemic. Everybody's drinking, everybody's smoking. I want to fit in. I want to have friends, but I also want to share my love for health and wellness. What do I do? So I didn't do anything. I didn't talk about it to anybody. I was super quiet about it. And everybody knew I was a little bit different because I would show up at a party where everybody else is drinking and I would have my smoothie, which would be a base of Gynostema tea with cacao powder and mucuna and goji and just all these things in there to give me my own personal high. And nobody else, of course, wanted anything to do with that or even wanted to know what are you drinking there. But then I was on a surf trip to Costa Rica with some of my best friends. And again, I wasn't pushing anything on anybody, but we would go out and surf for 4, 5, 6 hours. And they would come in after maybe 2 hours and need to rest and drink and eat. And they were done. And I was just doing my thing. I would stay out there in the water and keep going. And they saw me in the corner of the hotel room with my little magic bullet blender, making these smoothies for myself, not saying anything about it, just quietly drinking them, a couple meals a day. And eventually they said, hey, can you maybe make us one of those before we go back out in the water this afternoon? And this is quietly the moment I had been waiting for. And so I was super excited to share. The problem was that when you're super toxic and you take in compounds that are very powerfully detoxifying, it can kick off something called the Herxheimer effect, which is where you kind of get sick from your body trying to mobilize these toxins out so fast and it can't deal with them. And sometimes it ejects these toxins out right back the way they came in through the mouth. And 3 out of the 4 of them were vomiting within about 5 minutes. And this is a big realization for me. This did not quite go the way I had envisioned it. And I realized if I'm going to really have a beneficial impact on those around me, I have to figure out a different way to deliver it. And so I set the intention at that moment that I want people to consume the things that I make for them because they taste so amazing and it's such an extraordinary food experience that they consume it for that reason alone. And it just so happens to be maximally healthy as an afterthought. I didn't know how I was going to do it, but that was what I wanted to do. And I later in the following, 6 months or so, started learning a lot more about cacao and how to make chocolate with it and how it could be a real superfood. And it was confusing for me at first because my only reference for cacao powder or cocoa, as I knew it at the time, was Hershey's hot chocolate powder, which I would have maybe every now and then as a kid. And it certainly wasn't considered to be something healthy with the marshmallows that would kind of reinflate when you poured them into the hot water.
Yep, I remember.
And I was like, how this is mom, dad, this is healthy. What's going on here? Why is this amongst the superfoods? And I started learning it's the highest natural source of magnesium, the highest natural source of antioxidants. You have chromium, iron, zinc, and then you get into some of the interesting neurotransmitter compounds that make you feel the bliss that we know chocolate to be able to deliver. And this was a weird thing to me because I saw that you kind of had this Grand Canyon between two worlds of food. And on one end, you have foods that are health foods that people eat because they're healthy and they want to get certain health benefits, but they're not known for tasting very good. And you don't necessarily, most people will not eat them for a food experience in a positive way. On the other end, you have foods that everybody loves to eat and are great food experiences, perhaps, but they're nowhere near being healthy. And across this Grand Canyon, I kind of envisioned this little bridge built out of chocolate. And this is kind of something that has a foot in both worlds. It's something that people think of as an indulgence, but also a potential incredible health food if consciously made and formulated in the perfect way with the purest ingredients. So I thought, okay, this can be it. This can be the gateway to get people to start eating healthy. Because when you start to change your internal terrain via diet and lifestyle modification, your taste buds also evolve and you start to enjoy more healthy flavors. So this was kind of the opening to me. And then you can only make chocolate for friends and family for so long before you start thinking, okay, I'm making a lot of this. I might need to actually start thinking about turning this into a business and delivering it to the wider world. So that was kind of the birth of the company Addictive Wellness.
I love that. Okay, first of all, I'm going to do like a small recap of my thoughts, after sharing that. First of all, thank you for sharing it. That was like a whole journey experience. That was wonderful. I loved learning all of that.
Thank you.
And I want to wrap back to something you said somewhat in the beginning of that, which was, how of course, we know that a lot of people don't take their health into consideration until something happens. But you made a really strong point that I love that I don't think anybody else has ever said on the show. And it is also, uh, a lot of people go, oh, okay, well, now something's wrong with my health. I'm not going to take a conventional approach. I'm going to take a holistic approach. But you still waited. You still waited. So let's look at prevention. And I'm sure that it's been said in other ways, but you said it differently, right? Like, we all of us are now. I would assume most of the listeners, and obviously you and I, we're definitely interested in the holistic kind of, the holistic integrative approach to health. But there's still something to be said about really approaching it way before something ever happens, because that's really the key to longevity, I think, right there. And so just, you just said it so eloquently and perfectly. So I wanted to just note that.
Well, thank you.
Yeah. And then the whole like first of all, the chocolate Hershey's thing, I was dying because I'm like, oh my gosh, this was so me back in the day, right? With the hot chocolate and the marshmallows, and it's all fake. It's just horrific. But hey, we didn't know, right? We didn't know any better. We just did what we went to the pantry, we got what
Right.
our
You use the
parents.
best knowledge that you have at the time. And
Exactly.
that's, you do the best you can.
Exactly. And the other thing that I wanted to point out, and it's so funny that you use the word experience, because I was thinking about that when I was preparing for the show. And I thought to myself, people buy chocolate all the time. And, are they buying it more so for the health benefits, or are they buying it for the experience? So the fact that you are thinking that young, you're so young and you're going, how can I really make something of this? Because let's be honest, it's so much better to eat something that tastes amazing and is good for us versus it tastes like, I mean, nonsense and kind of crap, right? And
Right.
we just have to suck it down. I mean, I'm not really into that. I'll be honest. Like I'll do it if I have to, but what a joy it is to find something that's actually amazing, from a palate standpoint, and is also good for us. So the fact that you had this intention so early on is just so amazing and honestly admirable. And maybe it is that your parents like instilling some of this but I have to think probably maybe even not. You're probably, sort of a standout.
I'll
Just
take a little credit. It's for sure a combination. I mean, I'm obviously
yeah,
super blessed to have been born into a family that even exposed me to these things, because
yeah,
most people at the earliest are well into their 20s before they even get exposed to any of this. So
so true.
I was very blessed to have that start, absolutely. And I owe a lot to my parents.
Yeah, it sounds like it. It's not, and for me, just I relate to you in a way because I was exposed fairly early,
Hmm.
but not because of my parents. Although, gosh, they're amazing, and of course they did the best they could, but also come from a conventional background, right? Like my mom was in nursing and medical care and all of that.
Yeah.
But I learned earlier on than most in my, I would say like probably 20 years old and on, because I had gotten sick. So I
Right.
so I had I kind of like started to look elsewhere, right? So it's
Hmm.
like I relate in ways, but you were there, goodness, before definitely before most of us.
Yeah, I mean, for most people, it does take somewhat of a health crisis,
Yes.
whether that's something triggered by major hormone imbalances or sleep problems, or for a lot of people, it's gut health and bloating and things of that nature. Something has to make you pay attention to it. And I don't want to say that I didn't do that at all. You know, I had really bad acne as a teenager, and
Mm.
then I was on antibiotics for a number of years daily because I didn't know how to deal with it. That led me to having candida. So I did have also my own sort of health challenge that also led me to this. And that's why I made the chocolate sugar free to begin with, because I couldn't have any form of sugar, even something healthier like a coconut palm sugar or maple sugar, because I couldn't be feeding the candida in my system. So I a lot did come also from the suffering,
Yeah, yeah. So it's kind of like
while at the
both.
same time chasing the positive.
Right, right. Well, at any rate, I mean, it's pretty fantastic and amazing. And you don't really hear of, even today, as much as we have a lot of information at our fingertips, you still don't see, people that young starting in such a way as you did. So I just think it's amazing. I do want to touch on the whole sugar-free thing. We're gonna get there. We're definitely gonna
Yeah,
get there because that was fascinating to me. Just reading the ingredient list. But let's go. Let's kind of start from the beginning here in terms of adaptogens and herbs because let's just start at the fact that you have sort of, for lack of better terminology, infused adaptogens and so forth into the super high quality chocolate. But there's definitely a difference when we're talking about herbs because, some people think herbs, oh, okay, like the kind of herbs I cook with. That's not necessarily true in terms of what you're working with. So, what are the difference between herbs? And I know you're going to speak to us about tonic herbs, but can you give us just a little bit of a breakdown on that?
of course. So you certainly have culinary herbs that everybody's familiar with, things like basil and cardamom and cinnamon. And these certainly do have their own health benefits, like cinnamon, for example, amazing for blood sugar balance. So there's certainly benefits to be had there. And then when we look into, for example, the Chinese view on herbs, they really separate them out into three categories. One category is the poisons, those you reserve for your enemies and don't want to consume them yourself. The second class is medicinal herbs. These are herbs that you consume for a short to maybe moderate amount of time, and you don't consume them long term because they can long term have some side effects that build up. And then you have this elite class of herbs, which is known as the tonic herbs. And to classify as a tonic herb, the herb must be adaptogenic by nature. It must be what they call dual directional, that it's not just stimulating, it's not just suppressing, it's strengthening your body's own self regulatory mechanisms. The body is super intelligent and very good at trying to balance itself out as much as it can. Sometimes those regulatory mechanisms just need to be supported a little bit.
Boosted a little bit.
Yeah.
Yeah, that's and again, I have some, I should say, some experience with adaptogens and tonic herbs. But I'll be honest with you. I don't think that I've been super regular with consuming them. Uh, I would say probably with the exception of reishi. So that might be something where I did for a long period of time and then took a break.
Uh-huh.
But, for the most part, I want to say on my end, I've experimented with reishi, lion's mane, and probably turkey tail. I want to say are
Yeah.
like the three that I've sort of,
Turkey tail for women is amazing
oh, amazing.
and so tasty as well.
Is it? I've never had it in that
Yeah.
way. I've only had it where I can't taste it, like in a
All right.
capsule.
So yeah, like our turkey tail extract powder, my girlfriend will just mix with hot water and drink alone as a tea.
Mm,
Really delicious. Even somebody who's not necessarily health oriented will enjoy that flavor. It's really, really
really?
nice. Yeah.
Oh, I love that. Oh my goodness, I like that. So, can you give us some examples of? And again, we're going to get into the actual chocolate itself because I really want to dive in. I have a lot of questions about the chocolate, and I have been experimenting with it
Amazing.
since I got some in my hands. But can you give us some examples of these adaptogenic herbs and maybe how they would be restoring or healing to the body or the mind actually because really it's not isolated, it's depending on the adaptogen. I would think that it's either or both.
Of course. So reishi mushroom that you mentioned is my absolute favorite herb as well. So I love your history with that. Reishi works on a number of levels. It's supporting the immune system is one of the things that it's most famous for and well studied for. It's improving levels of white blood cells, improving macrophages, improving levels of T killer cells. And it's doing this in a way that's not just stimulating the immune system. For example, if it's a situation where the immune system is a little overactive, a little autoimmune, reishi can actually help calm things down. So it's dual directional in nature in that way, because more is not always better in terms of something like immune system behavior. Too much, it's not good. Your body could start attacking itself. Then it also supports your chi, your body's natural energy production. And then the thing that I love the most about it is its psychological and one could even say spiritual effects. It's, to me, the absolute best for calming you down, giving you a sense of inner peace, stabilizing you to the stressors of the world. Because as much as we get new technology that promises to make our lives easier, our stress levels year on year, or at least the stress that we're exposed to, does not seem to be going down, funnily enough.
No.
And so all we can do at this point is support our own stress resilience. And that is something that reishi does incredibly. It was considered by the Taoists to be the herb of immortality and spiritual potency. And it was highly sought after by Taoist monks and hermits. And this is something that they would traditionally say helps to guide you around the obstacles standing in between you and enlightenment. And so I kind of think of it like enlightenment GPS. It's telling me where the traffic jams are, where the road closures are, so I don't need to waste time with those. And it sounds crazy. It sounds like what a mushroom is going to do this for you. Is it? Are you talking about psilocybin? No, this is
Ah,
it's a I wouldn't say non-psychoactive because it's certainly long-term having psychological effects. I would say very subtly psychoactive. And reishi lovers kind of have a saying that if you don't think reishi is a magic mushroom, either you're not taking a high enough quality one or you just haven't been taking it for long enough.
oh, I like that. I like
Eh,
that.
so reishi is incredible, but there's many others. There's lion's mane mushroom that you mentioned, which is most well known for its effects on cognitive health, helping to support the myelin sheath. And the myelin sheath is this fat-based coating that runs on the outside of your nerves. It's like it encloses them and protects them. As the myelin sheath fades away, your nerves are very raw, open, and exposed, and you are more susceptible to various cognitive disorders, cognitive decline, etc. The more myelin sheath you have, the faster nerves can send signals along them. So it's kind of like having um, bumpers on a bowling lane, you could say. That when the bumpers are up and they're really good, you can just shoot that bowling ball down there. Don't worry about anything. When they're down, it's a little riskier.
I
And
like
so
that
lion's mane's,
analogy.
thank you.
That's good. That's good.
Lion's mane's great like that. It's also really positive in the area of digestive health, immune health as well. Another one that people might not have heard so much about, another spectacular one, is Shizandra. And this is a small red berry. The Chinese name is Wu Wei Zi, and this means five flavor fruit because it's simultaneously sweet, sour, salty, bitter, and pungent. And this is said to build all three treasures. And we can get deeper into the three treasure system if you like, but this is meaning it's building your deep core energy reserves, your moment to moment active energy, and your spiritual energy or supporting your higher self. And they say so it builds all three treasures, nurtures all five elements, and enters all 12 main energetic meridians. And so Shizandra, it also helps to cleanse the liver, supports both stage 1 and 2 liver detoxification. It's very beneficial for eyesight, for mental health, and memory and cognitive performance. So these are things that are not just meant to be taken for a short time. A lot of times you will try it and have a really cool experience your first time with a new herb, but they're really meant to be taken in small amounts daily, pretty much over the course of one's life. You can cycle on and off if you choose, if you want to try something different for a while, but they're about long-term use and building this foundation of radiant health on which you can then construct an extraordinary life. Because you can build a really cool life, but if your foundations of health are shaky, a little earthquake of stress or whatever, and it all could come tumbling down. But if you build this foundation of health that can be very much supported by these adaptogenic herbs, it's like going underneath your house and really reinforcing all the support so that when the earthquake comes, you'll wave a little bit, lean this way and that, no big deal.
Yeah. No, I love that so much. It's just interesting the timing of in terms of you speaking about resiliency. I just shared a post this morning, and that was part of my caption in the post was The goal is not to be I mean, obviously, all of us want to be at the top of our game in terms of health 100% of the time, but that's not real life. And we have a lot in front of us. We have a lot to deal with, and there's stressors, in every direction. The key is resiliency and the ability to bounce back from the things that quote unquote knock us down. So something like adaptogens and herbs and things of this nature can be so supportive and beneficial. So I literally that is it. It's about resiliency. So I love that you mentioned that just now.
Oh, thank you. Yeah, it's should be for everybody the huge focus of health is how are you building your resilience and your adaptability.
Yeah, yeah. So, in terms of these adaptogens, obviously quality is super important. And before we sort of dive into the chocolate, what do you have to say about sourcing? And I know there's a lot of stuff that goes on in this industry about maybe not being, not. Let's just say that there's companies out there that don't have their integrity necessarily intact. So, what would you say to someone who's like interested, right, and like dipping their toes into adaptogens and or blends? And what would you say is important to look out for when starting something like this?
Definitely. And first, I would want to say that you'll hear us mention over the course of this conversation many different adaptogens, and it can become a little bit overwhelming. You might think, I have to start with all of these at once. What am I supposed to do? How do I know? Read about a few of them. We have videos on YouTube that do, like explorations of each of them. And so you can figure out, find one that sounds exciting to you. And you start with one. You don't have to be overwhelmed. And you just start with one. And then maybe a couple months later, you add something new. That's totally a great way to go.
Yeah.
And in terms of sourcing, yeah, there's many different levels of sourcing. As with anything, quality is always going to vary. And it's a question of how it was grown. Is it grown in a laboratory or is it grown in a wildcrafted environment? Is it grown on a farm? The growing conditions are going to have a pretty big impact. And especially in the case of mushrooms, is it grown on a base of hardwood, which is the food that the mushroom evolved to be grown on in the case of these medicinal mushrooms generally? Or is it grown on grain, which is not the food it evolved to grow on? And grown on grain, a mushroom may not produce all of the compounds that you want to get from it. It's like if I took you off your ancestral diet and put you on a diet of only grain, you probably wouldn't be the fullest manifestation of yourself either. And
Yes.
from the growing, then you have to, of course, the question of purity is there. So it's very reasonable to ask a company if they can share their heavy metal testing results from a third party laboratory. And then you want to look at how is the herb being extracted? Because especially with mushrooms, if these are not extracted and they're just powdered, you can consume it. But the problem is the cell wall of these mushrooms, like reishi, are made of a substance called chitin, which is one of the hardest substances in nature, and you're not capable of digesting it. And so it needs to be extracted before it goes into your system. Otherwise, it's like eating wood. You could have powdered wood in it. You could eat it. It would go through your system. You're not going to get anything out of it. There's nutrients in there. They're just not accessible to you. So what you have to do is it has to be extracted, and it can be hot water extracted. It can be alcohol extracted. It can be both. You can also look with some mushrooms at consuming the spores as well, and those also need to undergo high pressure extraction to open up the cell walls and make them bioavailable. And even with lots of other herbs, things like astragalus or ashwagandha, these are not going to deliver as much if they're consumed in what's called a crude powder, where you just take the original herb, dry it, and powder it down.
Hmm.
When you have an extract, this is concentrating in a way that's been done for thousands of years the beneficial compounds from that herb and making sure that they've undergone the right processing specific to that herb to make them maximally bioavailable. So that's the next part of it. And then you have to see like just how much do you trust the company, and
Yeah.
that's part of why I'm personally so active in making educational content, as I, as the owner of the company, fully stand behind everything that we do. There's not a lot of other herbal companies or chocolate companies out there where you actually Willy Wonka style have a guy standing there and saying, I'm the face of this, I stand behind it, here's how we do it, this is why it's so special. So I like to think it means something that I am here presenting it to everybody in the world, and just saying this is as real as it gets.
Yeah, no, it does mean something. And I like the fact that you touched on the whole like grown on grain thing because I'll be honest, I didn't know that that was taking place until I did an interview on this podcast um, with Jeff Chilton.
Hmm.
And
Wonderful
from,
man.
yeah,
He's a legendary guy.
he's
Yeah.
a legend. And I honestly, I did not know what to expect going into that interview. And I left that interview not only learning so much, but just being so impressed. It was one of the most enjoyable interviews I'd ever done. Truly, friends, if you have not listened to my interview with Jeff Shilton, make sure that you not only listen to this one, but go back because they really do like it's amazing information, you know.
Yeah.
And he went into that. He went into the whole grain, the mycelium, and like all that, and I was shocked by the amount of, I guess, companies that were probably participating in this formulation and the way that they produce. And I just had no idea. It really blew my mind.
Yeah. It's amazing. Because people, it's unfortunate because people see mushrooms on the shelf of their health food store and it says some very positive things like certified organic, USA
Yes.
grown. And they think this is it. This has got to be quality. They don't know to think about yet what is it grown on. And they consume this. Let's say they buy a reishi or lion's mane like this. They consume it, and this is maybe their first foray into experience in adaptogens for mushrooms. And they don't have that beneficial of an experience. Like, I didn't know if I really experienced any benefit from this. And then maybe that's it. Maybe they never go back and try mushrooms for adaptogens again because it didn't work for me.
Yeah.
And
Yeah.
then think about all the future health benefit they may have lost from that. So it's kind of a tragedy in that way.
Yeah, it seems so. And, to your point earlier, you just said it a second ago, like, how would they know to look for anything else? I mean, the average customer and consumer is just trust, sadly, you know, we can't just trust anymore, right? We have to like do our due diligence and do a little bit more research when looking at products on the shelf or products that are sold because it's kind of like one of those things where oh well it says organic so it must be great or oh it's
Right.
sold on the shelf so it must be safe. It's like you know unfortunately we live in a world where that's not necessarily the case anymore, but still the average consumer is not going, oh, okay, well, I got to come back and then go to my computer when I get home and start digging. They just
And it's tough.
they want easy.
People have jobs to work, they have families, they
Yeah.
have kids to take care of, they have to make dinner and get that
Yeah.
on the table for the family. And they don't have time to become experts in mushroom growing science and extraction
Right.
methods. Like I fully respect it. This is not easy knowledge to just so happen to come across. But if people are listening to this podcast, hopefully they got
Yeah,
it.
no, absolutely. Hey, that's why we're here, right? It's like let's just help provide as much information in somewhat of a, it's long form, but somewhat of a condensed format so that people can be a little bit more aware of these things. And so when they are out there consuming, products, whether it's in store or online, they just have a little bit of, I should say, like more of a discerning eye, and they could just feel comfortable and confident with what they're purchasing because it's important. And I've been through the ringer with it myself. So moving right along, let's just dig into this chocolate piece a little bit because okay, first of all, well, no, I'm gonna save my experience that I've had with it so far. I'll save that, well, let's just start with this. You have taken these adaptogens, and you have, like I said earlier, you've infused them in this high quality chocolate. But you talk a lot about how not all chocolate or cacao is created equal and that you use a very specific kind of cacao to produce your product. So, can you tell us a little bit about this? Because I sure noticed it upon eating it. It's very noticeable for me. And I really want you to tell our listeners because it's kind of, yeah, it's kind of like, I want to say black and white. I mean, there's a big difference between what I've
Yeah.
tasted before and what I tasted with your chocolate.
Thank you. Thank you.
Yeah.
Absolutely. And as we were talking about with adaptogens, when it comes to the world of cacao, there's a huge spectrum of quality. On one end, you could have what probably I was having in that Hershey's hot chocolate as a kid. You can have cacao that is a very hybridized strain, which has been bred to produce maximum yield with no regards for the quality of final product itself. Something designed to grow in different climates, designed to grow on a monocropped farm in nutrient deficient soils, harvested by labor methods of questionable ethics and integrity. and contaminated with heavy metals and mycotoxins, which are the metabolic byproducts of mold that are present in almost every chocolate product out there. Or I wanted to go, of course, to the opposite end of that spectrum, as you can imagine. So, I was, having been in the health industry since such an early age, I had the really good fortune to make some amazing connections. And one of them was to an Ecuadorian source of some really special cacao, which is wild harvest. So it's not grown on a plantation, not grown on a farm. There's no fence around it. These are trees that are heirloom variety trees it's the original cacao, basically, called Riba Nacional. And these are harvested from wild lands. And so there's a whole network of people that have access to certain wild lands and are able to go out and harvest these and bring them back. And so they're wild. And that's special to me because a wild plant is going to have, I think, more robust genetics. It's not being protected by a farmer. It's not being protected by a fence. It's not being fed all kinds of fertilizers to do well. It's having to survive in the survival of the fittest out there in the wild, where everything is in competition for every single possible resource. And so these are old, like 20 to 80-year-old big tall trees producing some really special cacao. They're grown in volcanic soil. So this is soil that's very mineral rich because you got this volcanic soil. Basically, you're bringing up minerals from the center of the earth effectively. And one of the also really unique things about the cacao is that it's completely mycotoxin free, as confirmed by repeated third-party lab testing. So people who are avoiding mycotoxins, who have mold sensitivity, who have past mold exposure, or really, like, mycotoxins are not beneficial for anybody. So if
Yeah,
you
for
want,
anybody.
they're never going to be a superfood.
No, definitely not.
So we try to really have the purest cacao possible as the base of what we're going to deliver. And I think, as you said, and as I hope it comes through.
No, it comes through, and it did come through. Well, first of all, I like the fact that you touched on the soil because, I think more and more of us are getting wind of the fact that our food is just not what it was. And so much of that is because of depletion of soil and the minerals that are not found in our soil anymore. So when you are talking about, how rich this soil is from volcanic, obviously like the surrounding areas, it must make such a critical difference in the, I should say, end product, because
Yeah.
we're seeing we're seeing our food it just go down in quality here. So yeah, that must be like night and day, I would assume.
A plant can only make use of whatever minerals are present in the soil. So
Yeah.
especially in the Western world, where we've not been kind to our soils whatsoever, you can look at analysis of something like a tomato and look at the number of minerals present in the tomato and the levels of those versus something, say, back in the 50s or 60s. It's a scary difference.
Wow.
So when we have a chance to consume things that have maximal nutritional density to get a bit back more to those old times, I think it's a good idea.
Yeah, and it makes me sad because it's so interesting that this is something that is, it's almost like it's a novelty now. It's something that is, wow, it's so luxurious to have this mineral rich food, or this, in your case, this mineral rich cacao, right? Which that should be the standard no matter what. It should
Right.
be. The key is
It used to be
the
the only form of food. You didn't find food that
exactly.
was nutritionally dense.
Exactly. And so, and I've been thinking a lot about the whole like there's a crop of people out there that say, oh, we should just be getting nutrients from food. I'm anti-supplement. I'm anti-supplement. And it's like, okay, I get it. But at the same time, if we're only getting nutrients from food, our food is just not up to standard anymore for the most part. And that's not to be like pessimistic and, oh, scare everybody away. It just is what it is. And so
You have to be realistic. Yeah.
that's right. That's exactly it, And so it really is amazing, I guess, to find these little pockets of places, I should say, where you still know that you could buy something that like has the life force and the energy from the growth and just all of the richness that it's been grown in, and that it really is going to affect your body in a different way than, say, probably 90% of the other stuff that you're eating.
Right. And It's great to have access to these things, and it's something to be so grateful for. And also, we can appreciate the fact that there is some movement now going on to restore the soils through regenerative agriculture and things of that nature. So hopefully, we pull it all off, and it all ends up being okay, and we can have one day a tomato that's just as nutritionally dense as a cacao bar.
Oh my goodness, wouldn't that be something? Well, I have a feeling that there are other countries, and again, we have listeners in other countries, but there are other countries I think that still have more of that than the US. I think the US is unfortunately like on the lower end of the list. Wouldn't
For
you
sure.
say?
And
Yeah.
we're still in the shadow of the Dust Bowl.
Yeah.
As long ago as it could seem like, I don't know if it ever fully rebounded, but
Probably not.
we could, the US is very much a center of innovation in the world as well. So if
Yeah.
there's anywhere that it can be figured out, hopefully it's here.
You know what? I love the optimism. I have to say, anything is possible and miracles
It's a
do
result of a
happen.
lot of chocolate.
Right? Exactly. Exactly. Well, back to the chocolate. So I want to ask you a few questions about it. You mentioned sugar free, which, you know, I have to be honest. I'm not somebody who would be walking up and down an aisle at the market and go for a sugar-free bar, and that's usually because of what they are doing as a supplementation, right? Like whatever they're putting in there, a lot of times I'm like, no, no, thank you. Like I don't always think that it's probably the best, but you have sort of figured it out, and not only figured it out, but the fact that it tastes the way that it tastes and it's sugar free is mind blowing. So, can you tell us a little bit about how you formulated it and why it's sugar free and what you're using in its place?
Absolutely. So people have, of course, been very disappointed by the history of sugar-free products out there. You just have to do a search on Amazon for sorbitol gummy bears and read the for pure comedy, and read the reviews, and read about the disastrous gastrointestinal
Oh,
experiences that people have had. But that's not to say that all sugar-free sweeteners are going to cause the same problems. And so there are problematic ones, right? Like GMO sorbitol, for example, would be one. Or of course, you can get into like ACE K and aspartame, and
oh,
that whole route of things, which you don't want to touch. It causes absolute disastrous long-term health effects, and really has the opposite effect from the reasons that many people consume it.
yeah.
The route we have gone is because, for me, when I was first dealing with my candida, at the same time I was learning about cacao and chocolate, I wanted to try some of these raw chocolates out there. And they were sweetened with healthier sweeteners, things like maple sugar or coconut palm sugar. But still, because of my candida that I couldn't really sort out yet, I couldn't be consuming that much sugar. I would hit a certain amount of this chocolate and it'd be like, okay, that's too much sugar.
Mm,
I need to back off here. And even if somebody doesn't have a sugar sensitive condition, you don't want to just consume an infinite amount of sugar. So I recognize that sugar is a limiting factor to how much chocolate somebody can consume, and thereby how much of a good time in life they can have. So
so true.
I thought, if I can make this sugar free in a way that allows the experience to still be just as amazing, and doesn't have any negative side effects, and tastes just as good, and has only positive health effects, that would be optimal.
Yeah.
So when we first started our company, I created the formulation with a combination of xylitol made from organic birch trees and a special non-bitter organic stevia. And we're actually transitioning to a new recipe now, which some of our bars are already out in this new recipe, and the others are going to be shortly.
Oh,
And so you would have had, I think, the ones that you tried, the Pure and the Tranquility would be the new formulation, which
oh,
is sweetened with a combination of organic allulose and organic monk fruit extract, which I think is going to open it up to an even wider group of people. Because, for example, xylitol, as healthy as it is for the vast majority of the population, there's a small percentage of people who, for example, have SIBO, small intestinal bacterial overgrowth, who can't have it. And so that's one example. And then stevia, our stevia is so clean tasting that even most people who say, I don't like stevia, I've had a horrible experience with it, they try this and they don't even know it's stevia from the flavor. But there's still a small percentage, like 2% of the population, who are what I would call stevia super tasters. And they have just like overdeveloped whatever that taste bud is that picks up stevia sweetness, and it's overwhelming for their system. So my hope is that this new formulation, so far everybody is saying it's even better than the previous one, and I'm hoping it'll open up to even more people to be able to enjoy this as well, while
yeah. No,
not affecting the blood sugar.
I I love it. I love it. Like I said, I'm just not one to like pick it up. But here's my experience. So I opened the tranquil. I played around a little bit with the tranquility. So you're saying that the one that I have now is the newer version, right?
Correct. Correct.
Okay, because I was going to say if there was stevia in there, I didn't taste anything, but it's the monk fruit. So here's the way that I felt when I took it. So my what's in the tranquility? Where there's
There
definitely
you have reishi,
reishi
of
in
course.
there.
You
Yep,
have ashwagandha,
yep.
and you have hoshu.
That's right. That's right. That's right. I should have wrote that down in my notes, but I
Oh,
didn't.
no problem.
So here's what I was like thinking about how I could describe how it tasted. It tasted like there was so much body to the product, like to the chocolate itself, but it was so light at the same time. Like there was no artificial taste, which I was shocked to be honest, because with every other sugar-free chocolate I've ever had, it just I might be super sensitive, stevia taster too. I don't know, maybe. But I've always been like, no, I'm always putting it back on the shelf or, just I'll try it and I'll never buy it again. And I usually just like end up with the ones that have a little bit of sugar, even if, like you said, even the coconut sugar or the healthier versions.
Yeah.
That was not my experience. It felt like clean. It felt clean. I guess I don't even know. I was like, I don't even really have like any kind of big word to use other than it just felt clean and I could really taste the cacao and it was sweet, but not in a way that was offensive. It just felt like natural. Does that make sense?
Absolutely. I'm so glad you enjoyed it. And people do often say that it leaves them with a very clean mouthfeel, whereas other chocolates can maybe leave you a feeling a bit like waxy in the mouth. So
Yeah,
that's something
that's
we've
it.
managed to avoid.
It was like a clean. I'm like, okay, what words can I use to describe this? Because I was really trying to pay attention and not like overanalyze it, but pay attention in how, because again, I'm not just eating it to eat it. I'm eating it because I want to feel the experience behind it as well. I mean, I'm
Right.
invested here. And that's the way that I felt. It was just like clean, but I could really feel like the body of it, if that makes sense. Again, I don't have the proper words.
No, that's one. You're doing great. And I part of the what's going on with the flavor there is that the reason I incorporated these adaptogens into chocolate is because some of them can have pretty strong flavors, whether it's
Yeah.
ashwagandha, which is not known for tasting good, or reishi mushroom, which is a very strong bitter flavor if it's a potent reishi.
Yeah.
People in the West have not really been raised on bitter tasting foods. Um, my girlfriend's from Hungary. She loves bitter, loves sour, is raised on a whole different flavor palette. But in the West, our bitter compounds, which are the medicinal compounds in foods, have typically been bred out of them. And then those medicinal compounds are sold back to us as drugs, medicines, and maybe supplements, which, that's a whole other kind of conspiracy theory conversation for another day.
That's
But the
another
idea
interview,
is that
friends.
the medicinal compounds are the bitter compounds in a lot of senses.
Yeah.
And so in the West, we've been kind of not trained to appreciate these. And weirdly, the one bitter flavor that people are sort of okay with, actually really okay with, is the chocolate bitter flavor. And so I realized I can take a lot of these bitter herbal flavors and camouflage them under the chocolate. And it actually builds a bigger body of flavor and adds a little bit more complexity of flavor to it without standing out too much. So you don't feel like, oh, I'm eating mushrooms. I'm just eating a really dynamic and interesting flavored chocolate.
Yeah, no, it was fantastic. I'm so excited to dig into the rest of the varieties because, and you've sold me like in terms of just, I feel like now, how is it going to be going back to any other kind of chocolate? That's just, I mean, if I'm honest, I don't think I can. So,
It's so sweet.
and I'm not blowing smoke. I mean, and I feel like hopefully my listeners know that. Like, I will be pretty honest about things, right? And I just feel like it really just felt, even sometimes I'll get like a weird feeling in my stomach after consuming chocolate. Sometimes I don't know what that is about. Maybe time of day, maybe I ate a big meal or after, beforehand, or maybe it could be anything, right? It could be literally anything. But literally, I just felt like so good. And maybe that was also in part because of the adaptogens in there too. Because
It
I
all
was kind of
helps.
like floating around for a minute. I'm like, okay, I need more of this tranquility situation.
Yeah, yeah, yeah. That's my personal favorite as well. And it's
Yeah.
funny because with the different varieties of chocolate that we offer, instead of doing different flavors, as you saw, we do different functions. And
Yes.
for us, it's kind of an interesting having our finger on the pulse of society and what people are ordering the most of at any given time based on what's going on in the world. In the first couple of years of our business, it was all energy chocolate. That was always number one. And then 2016 came around and America went kind of wild in many directions for many reasons from pretty much then on forward. And ever since, tranquility is number one.
Well, I have a guess as to why people need why people need this variety. I mean,
Right.
like, yeah, everyone's on, level 24 out of 10 when it comes
Right.
to
And to me,
stress
the
these days.
tranquility is the most important. It's
Yeah, yeah,
stress is going to wreck your health,
yeah.
long-term chronic stress. And so building that resilience, like we talked about, is the best.
Yeah, absolutely. And that was a really beautiful segue because the next thing I want to ask you is about caffeine. You just said like energy chocolate, right? So, what if someone's listening to this, but they don't drink coffee? They feel as though they're not, they're super sensitive, and they might even be sensitive to chocolate, or they think that they're sensitive to chocolate as well because there's quote unquote caffeine. I guess two-part question. Is there caffeine? Is it the same? And would it affect them, or is there some sort of counterbalance because there's also adaptogens? Like how would you break that down?
It's a great question. And I'm actually the perfect case study for this. And
Oh,
I'll
good.
explain
Okay.
what I mean by
Okay.
that in a
Okay.
second. But with cacao, there's a very small amount of caffeine. So if you look at, for example, when we have our cacao powder tested for caffeine content, it's 12.5 milligrams of caffeine per tablespoon of cacao powder. And that's within the range of what you would see in a cup of decaf coffee. So not something anybody would be ever super concerned about. It's on the, I would say, higher end of the decaf coffee range, but still within the range of what you see in a cup of decaf coffee. Then what you see primarily in chocolate is a cousin of caffeine called theobromine. And this is another one that is a stimulant. However, it doesn't affect the central nervous system in the same way that caffeine does. It's processed by a different pathway. So somebody who has a hard time processing caffeine, that doesn't necessarily apply to theobromine. And it builds up in the system slower. So its effect is more gentle and it comes down slower. So it's not as much of a spike and a drop as you might see with caffeine, and it stays in the system longer. So it's all more gentle and more gradual. Nobody has ever experienced a coffee level of caffeine energy with a chocolate bar. It doesn't hit you in the same way. You can get certainly energy from it, and there's a pleasantly stimulating nature to it, but it's never going to hit you like a cup of
Yeah.
actual coffee.
That might be the sugar more so than the quote unquote caffeine in there,
Right.
right?
That too, that too.
Yeah.
So the reason I said I'm a good case study here is that I can't touch coffee. I can't touch green tea. I can't touch yerba mate. It's a real problem for me for
Wow.
two reasons, and they're genetic reasons. One is that I'm a slow caffeine metabolizer. So it hits me in my system, and my body can't get rid of it fast enough. So it just keeps hitting me and hitting me and hitting me.
Mm.
Whereas somebody who's a fast caffeine metabolizer on the other end of the spectrum, they take it, it hits them, it goes in fast, it goes out fast, and they're ready for another cup of coffee 30 minutes or an hour later. And then the other thing is that I have a gene called the COMT++ gene. And this is something that has benefits and vulnerabilities to it, I would say. And this is because I make certain neurotransmitters just like normal people. And when it comes to dopamine and epinephrine and norepinephrine, I make them just like anybody else, but I don't get rid of them at the same speed. So it's like if you have a freeway with an on ramp that's 3 lanes and an off ramp that's 1 lane. I make them like a normal person. I can't get rid of them fast enough. So I end up with this traffic jam potentially. And so if I consume something that is increasing my production of these, a la caffeine, then it makes it even worse. It's opening up more lanes on the on ramp while the off ramp hasn't changed in size. So you end up with the real issue there because these neurotransmitters, or catecholamines as they're called, become after a while irritants to my nervous system. So if I have caffeine, first day, I'm on top of the world because these are all like flooding my brain. The dopamine's high. I'm super focused. It's incredible. But then the coming down is about 4 or 5 days of feeling really sad afterwards as these things really irritate my nervous system, which is no fun at all. And it's a combination of those two genes, right? Because not only can I not get rid of those neurotransmitters fast, but I also keep that caffeine around for longer. So it's even having more of an effect, making more neurotransmitters. Thank goodness I'm 100% fine with chocolate and don't get any of these negative situations coming from chocolate because I got to be able to enjoy something.
Right? Right. Exactly. Wow. I bet a lot of people listening to this, that do have a sensitivity are wondering if they have something similar in terms of the genetics, because that would explain it, I'm sure, for them. And I'm pretty sensitive to caffeine. I don't know in terms of, I haven't done any testing in terms of my genes and stuff, but I think I can enjoy like 1 cup of
Yeah.
coffee and be fine. If I do anything more than one, I'm sort of a nutcase.
Hmm.
And I also have that crash. So, but fortunately with chocolate, it's not normally the case. And I do like this too, because I feel like that kind of brings me to the question, how would it be, consuming it at different times of day? Like, would someone have
Right.
to say, oh, well, I can only have it in the afternoon, or I can only have it in the middle of the day, so to speak? Or can I have it after dinner and go to sleep and be fine?
And that will be an individual question as well, because like you have different genes that regulate your ability to metabolize caffeine. You also have ones that regulate theobromine metabolism. And so for somebody who notices that they're super sensitive, okay, then maybe you keep your chocolate to before 2 p.m.
Mm.
as I would basically recommend that anybody do with something strong like coffee. Other people who metabolize it very quickly would be great having a tranquility chocolate as a little after dinner treat and don't have any issues with that. So it's individual. And that COMT gene, I would encourage everybody to find out which version of it they have, because there's 3 different versions. There's the one that I have where you can't get rid of them very fast. There's the minus minus version where you get rid of them extra fast. And then there's just the plus minus or the minus plus where you're kind of average. And this, I've spent a lot of time learning about my genetics and how to optimize my health for my genetics. And this one gene, more than anything else, defines my whole reality and life experience, as weird as that may sound,
Wow.
because if you have this gene, you tend to have higher frontal lobe function, more ability to focus and learn things faster, and you have a great filter. So it's pretty rare for me to say something and say, "Oh, I didn't mean to say that." And so it has a lot of benefits to it, but it also has some vulnerabilities that I mentioned. So, for example, if you didn't respect this gene, if I went wild long term on caffeine, or if I had a very, very high stress life that I didn't moderate with supplements and various other practices, it puts you at much higher risk for things like Parkinson's and schizophrenia and bipolar later on, which I certainly don't want to have anything to do with those.
Right.
So, um, this is, people, sometimes people don't want to get their genes tested because they say, I don't want to give up that power. I don't want to, feel like I'm a victim of my genes. You're not. This is just giving you a roadmap saying, okay, if you take this left turn, here's where you're going to end up. If you take this right turn, there's where you're going to end up. Otherwise, you're just driving without a map and just trying to like rely on your internal sense of direction, which people can get in touch with their bodies and see what works and what not. But having a roadmap kind of helps.
Yeah, it does. Goodness, this has me thinking. I feel like there's probably somebody or a few people listening going, okay, well then how do I do that? Do you have any advice for that just off the cuff, like in terms of this kind of genetic testing? How would they go about doing so?
Yeah, there's various different companies out there. Some are offering more and more like hands-on guidance and things of that nature. I can just speak to the way that I did it for myself is that I had the 23andMe um, genetic testing done just for the um, ancestry. You don't need to bother spending twice as much in doing the health package because the health insights they're able to give are actually not very interesting because the regulations they don't actually get to tell you that much. So don't pay double and get the
Mm.
health package. Just get the
Okay.
basic one. Then you download your data from there. And there's 2 great websites that you can pay like 10 or 12 bucks and upload it to that will do an analysis for you. One is called Promethease, like the guy Prometheus, but ASE at the end.
Okay.
And that's a more advanced one, maybe a little overwhelming for some folks. A more user-friendly one that's easier to understand is from foundmyfitness.com. They have some great analyses there that are very easy to deal with. And you can get huge, huge insights. And if you can find a practitioner who you can work with who has expertise and specialty in genetic testing and analysis, that can also be really helpful to have some wisdom.
Yeah, no, thank you for that because I was wondering myself. I was thinking that maybe this is something that I want to do. It seems like it would be very beneficial and helpful. And you said something earlier too. It's like, I was thinking when I was sharing, like, oh, I can have 1 cup of coffee and then I got to kind of cut it. I'll be honest with you. It also kind of depends on the day or the time or even just the week or the time of month or just whatever's going on in my life because I do notice that I can make my coffee the same exact way every day at the same time every day, and sometimes it will affect me differently. And so
Yeah,
I
you're not the
feel
same
like
person as you were the other day.
exactly, that's exactly, and I feel like it's almost not necessarily, but it's almost more in terms of women. I think women probably fluctuate even more than men, wouldn't you say?
Oh, 100%, because you have
Yeah.
the menstrual cycle, and
Yeah.
you are a dramatically different person than you were 2 weeks ago
Yeah.
when you had a totally different mix of hormones in your system. These hormones are like the master switches of your health, and that has multiple implications. When your hormones are one way, your whole reality is one way, and when they're another way, your whole reality is another way. And also, when hormones are imbalanced, your reality is a mess.
Oh,
And when you get them all in the right place, everything downstream, a lot of people will have all these health issues, and they can just focus on their hormones alone. Once those get sorted out, oh, skin issues go away. Oh, gut health issues go away. Oh, fatigue goes away. Oh, I'm sleeping better. And it
yes.
just comes from getting the hormones healthier.
It's so true. Oh my goodness. It's underestimated and underrated how important this is. And in fact, I'm getting ready to do a show in a few weeks specifically on women's hormone health, and I'm so excited. And she challenges a lot of the narrative too. But you just in kind of base prepping for the show, I'm thinking to myself, wow, do I have some work to do too? Because as much as I've, been in this realm of health for over 2 decades now, there's, I get like, I don't want to say I get lazy, but I just sometimes don't want to be constantly digging and investing and all this stuff. But when it comes to hormone health, thyroid, adrenal, I mean,
Mhm.
it's all hormone related. It's all hormones, sex hormones. They're, like you said, it is underrated in terms of how important it is to have balance in these areas. Because if one thing's off, even just the thyroid alone, your whole entire life is off.
Absolutely. Yeah.
Yeah.
And
Yeah.
like I said, people will try to address symptoms when hormones are the root cause. They'll say, oh, I need it for the skin health, or I have acne or rosacea, or I'm bloated all the time, or I'm gaining weight, like weight gain. Check out your thyroid.
Yeah. Absolutely.
That's that's really controlling your whole metabolism there.
Oh, it's like I said, it's completely underrated. And a lot of how people, I know we're like tangenting, but it's so interesting to me talking about this. It's just, it really is so important. And unfortunately, a lot of practitioners, they don't go about it necessarily in the right way as well. And so it's very important to have somebody that's really addressing the body from a whole body standpoint, number one, and also really has the groundwork and the foundation for how all of this operates, because you see a lot of that, right? Like, oh, one level's off. Okay, here's some, synthroid or whatever. And that's not fixing the problem either.
Right. And also, to find a practitioner that has an understanding of the exact ranges for optimization that you want
Yes.
these levels of different hormones to be in. Because so many people, unfortunately, go to their general practitioner, have a hormone test done. General practitioner looks at it and says, you're perfectly fine. Yet all the person's symptoms are saying otherwise. And
Yep.
they'll hear this perfectly fine, year after year. And then they finally meet a functional medicine doctor with hormone specialty. And they learn that, oh, the range that was this wide is for like basic existing, and this much narrower range is the range for thriving and optimal health. And so by understanding those narrower ranges and fine tuning what you're doing with your health, it can make a world of difference.
Well said. So important. And I've had that experience too, and I should say in my earlier years, I feel like I'm gonna, fall over any second, and you get the answer, or your labs look good, and it's like,
Yeah,
really, like, I swear I'm not making this
please
up.
observe my reality.
Right? Can you just hear me and listen to me? And you hear that all the time, all the time. It's really, really crazy and kind of sad. I have sort of an interesting question for you. I just want your take on it because I was thinking about it in terms of chocolate. There was some concern about chocolate being having like lead levels, and I feel like I wanted to ask you because you're an expert in this area. Was that something that was sort of like blown out of proportion, or is that something to really take into consideration and actually very much a present situation with some chocolate out there that's on the market?
Both. So,
Okay.
and
Okay.
what I mean by that is, uh, it was it is a serious issue in that lots of chocolates do have concerningly high levels of heavy metals that are introduced while in transport, that are introduced while being processed, that are introduced from contaminated soils, and that's a problem. And that it's ideal that companies and growers, et cetera, take active steps to mitigate this and prevent this from happening. And there are products that are a problem with their heavy metal levels. Um, Happy to say it's a non-issue with our chocolate. Basically, our lead levels, for example, are either so low that the laboratory test can't even detect them, or sometimes they go just above the very lowest level that the lab can even pick up. And the reality of the modern world is you're not really going to find almost any health foods that are zero heavy metals of any kind, because we live in the industrial world and we've done some weird stuff on this earth that has made it to the furthest corners of anywhere you could go. So you want to minimize, but if you aim for absolute zero, you'll end up not consuming food. And if you're aiming for absolute zero, you'll stop breathing the air, which also has heavy metals in it if you live in a city. And that's not good for your health long term. So you have to
Right.
understand there will be some. So shoot for the lowest you can get, but don't necessarily have absolute zero as the goal, I think. We
Okay.
try to minimize, of course, on the production end, but because we can't get an absolute zero lead every time, we're not going to stop making chocolate
Right.
when it can deliver so many health benefits. Now, when I was saying it's totally overblown, the huge attention that came to this in the past year and a half or so was centered around a Consumer Reports article warning people about this. And that article was based on analyzing things compared to California Prop 65 regulation levels. And Prop 65 was something that was created with good intentions to protect people from heavy metals. It's since turned into something different because of the way that they set the limits. Basically, they set the limits via the following method. They look at the research and say, what is the level of exposure to this metal or this plastic or that exhaust fume that has been shown in the research to cause no harm? Okay, the logical step here would be we take that level and say that's the safe level. What they've done is pretty wild. They take that level and divide it by 1,000 and say that's the safe level. So it's created a regulatory environment in which nobody can ever be fully in compliance. That's why pretty much any product you see sold in California, it has this Prop 65 warning sticker on it,
Mm.
because no company wants to take the risk of having some one compound on this endless list of compounds at such a minuscule level. Like, you can go into a bank, you can go into Disneyland, you can go into any parking garage and you'll see Prop 65 warning
Yes.
signs. You can
Yes.
go into the Beverly Hills Hotel and they've got the warning sign right out front. So it gets to the point where if the warning is on everything, everywhere, at all times, does it mean anything anymore?
Mm.
I think it kind of lost its meaning because they set the levels too low. And it became a law that a certain group of lawyers basically used to go after companies who they can sue and get settlements from because they're over the limits and maybe didn't put a warning.
Oh, wow. Okay, that is very helpful information. Thank you for that. Because I remember you're right. It was probably about a year and a half ago that it came out, and it was making its way too through social media.
Oh, it
And I
made the rounds
saw
for
it.
sure.
Yeah, you saw. I know. I
Yeah.
was like, oh no. And I even had a friend of mine message me and say, oh great. So I eat chocolate every single night. Now I'm not going to eat chocolate anymore. Like what? What's the deal? And I literally think I storied it on my social media, and I said, I think that everybody needs to simmer down a little bit. Like there's probably more underneath the hood of this story. And instead of everybody just taking it and running with it, um, maybe just wait or look into it a
Yeah,
little bit
people got
more.
excited for sure. And
Yeah.
um, I think you definitely want to minimize heavy metals,
Yeah, for
but
sure.
you need to do it within reason.
Absolutely. If you are thinking that you are going to live a completely 100% non toxic life and you are living in the modern world, you are always going to be disappointed. There is
Right.
absolutely no way around it.
And you may even suffer because of it, because if you're saying I'm not consuming any heavy metals, you may be not paying attention to the fact that you do have heavy metals in your system, even if you don't know how they sneakily got there. They could have been in there from your childhood. And I honestly do think that in the modern world, heavy metal detoxification should be something that everybody does. And this is, you consume things like chlorella and activated charcoal to do it in a gentle form. But it's also a great idea to work with a practitioner who has experience in heavy metal detoxification and can put you on a chelation protocol with one of several chelation agents like DMSA or DMPS or EDTA that are a little bit more aggressive in getting these heavy metals out of the system. And at least do one round of that and have a urine test done and see what gets mobilized.
Yeah.
And you want to have a practitioner that lines up a whole row of supplements for you to take with this to make sure you're getting them out and to support your body detoxifying them so it's not going to create a Herxheimer healing crisis sickness reaction.
Yeah.
But get a look at your urine and have it tested, see what your heavy metal levels are like. If you've lived the purest of purest lives and somehow are absolute zero everything, great. Please let me know what you've been doing. I want to
Right.
hear about it. But
Same.
in almost all cases, there's going to be some stuff going on there. And these are things that can really perniciously negatively impact your health
Yeah.
in so many ways, whether it's your hormones or your energy production. And bringing them down, I know it was a big thing for me doing DMSA chelation therapy. And I had lived a relatively healthy life, relatively pure life. I wasn't doing anything too crazy, yet I had some metals in my system and some ones that I couldn't even figure out, like, where the heck did I get barium from? Um, but getting these down, I felt a lot better.
Yeah. Yeah. No, that's multiple, it's so many sources. It's hard to count. I mean, it could be coming from food. It could be coming from soil. It could be coming from water. It
All
could
right.
be
And like
coming from
uranium, like
air. Yeah.
where did I get uranium?
Right. No, I know, believe me. And there's other ways that you can sort of like dive into this, or I should say, like even dip your toes in. You can do like a hair analysis, like an HTMA even will show like some things, like that are strikingly out of balance. I've even had like my holistic doctor. He does just it's very basic, but it tends to be fairly on point. Like even just muscle testing, just applied kinesiology, even just to see like, oh, there seems to be like a heavy metal issue there. And if something pops up, then you can go into deeper testing, right? Then you can go and get some additional work done. I mean, there's lots of ways that you can kind of like just without going overboard or spending tons of money or, just doing
Sure,
something
sure.
without some groundwork.
Yeah, absolutely. And although I would say, like, I think heavy metals are so omnipresent in the
Yeah,
modern
that's
world
true.
that everybody's got them.
Yeah.
And
Oh, for sure.
therefore, I think it's even if it's something you save up for, it's not something you have to do long term. Maybe you do a few rounds of this and really bring your levels down and create some transformation. If it's something you have to save up for, make that your birthday present to yourself or
That's
your Christmas
right.
present. It's so worth it.
It's so worth it. Yeah. And it affects so many things. And again, it's not to be paranoid or neurotic about, like, and I say that often on the show. We don't talk about things to make people scared. It's just awareness of this. And a lot of stuff, excuse me, a lot of times when you're going to oftentimes a conventional or traditional practitioner, they're not thinking about bringing these things up because that's just simply not their wheelhouse. They're not taught about it. So the whole like your labs are normal situation, you might be having something like too much heavy metals in your system, or maybe there's some parasitic activity or some like you candida, that's just
Yeah.
not picked up by conventional testing or blood work.
Right. You could have, or maybe eating lots, maybe you eat lots of swordfish or lots
Ah,
of tuna, and
uh-huh.
your mercury levels are off the charts and completely wrecking you and putting you on a highway towards Alzheimer's. But your doctor's never going to know because they're
So
not
true.
testing for it. They're not looking at that's on a standard blood panel that they do at your annual physical.
Oh
So
my
it would
gosh.
you would never know.
That is so, so true. It's just a quick story that popped into my mind when you said that I'll share real quick is back in like, 1945 when I was, when I was when I was a teenager, way back in, the olden days, I should say. My boyfriend in high school,
Wait, you weren't a teenager in
I'm
1945.
kidding.
No, like, wait a second. I need to know what you're doing for anti-aging. This is spectacular.
I know, right? I was going to say, maybe somebody should interview me.
Yeah, you need to be on the news.
I know, right? I mean, you guys have to watch YouTube because I look amazing for 110 or wherever we would be. Anyway, back a long time ago when I had a boyfriend in high school and early college, and I have this really specific memory. His father used to eat canned tuna all the time, and one day he passed out and they didn't know why. I think he passed out at work, and I have this like vague memory of something he had to be transported back home or whatever the case is. I can't remember. And it was because he had high mercury in his
Wow.
system. And somehow, even back then in 1945, they were able to figure out that that's what it was. So, again, that's an example of something extreme, but how these things can really actually be, a big deal. And yeah, he full on passed out. I think it was in his work setting.
Right. Yeah. And so, people don't need to get too afraid about having
No.
seafood. You just have to be strategic. Avoid things like tuna, avoid things like swordfish that are going to be at the top of the food chain because basically this mercury just accumulates up the food chain.
Yeah.
If you have a fish that's at the bottom of the food chain, it's not going to be consuming all these other fish and concentrating all their heavy metals into itself. So you could look at something like a wild caught salmon or a trout or sardines that tend to be much, much lower.
Yeah. Yeah. And again, that's not saying like, hey, everybody has to stay away from it 100% of the time. I mean, if you love tuna, you have it every once in a while. It's not going to probably hurt you. But if it's something that's, a regular thing, then it might be something to consider. Absolutely. I have another random question for you. Would consuming the chocolate with the adaptogens, would it interfere or be like counterproductive if someone's on like certain types of other medications or supplements, or adaptogens in general safe when you are on other things, like say someone's on a medication, or even like something like a blood pressure medication or a statin, or something of that nature?
It's a very good question. And if somebody's on a medication, they have to really talk with their doctor about everything that they're doing and eating and supplementing with and consuming because these drugs can have lots of interactions. Or let's say you're taking something for blood pressure. If you're trying to lower your blood pressure and very closely control it with this drug, then you consume an herb that also lowers blood pressure. Oh, maybe your blood pressure is too low now, and you need to
Mm,
reassess the levels of that medication in combination with this, which is great, right? Maybe you can take less medication,
right.
but you also don't want to go wild and find out because you pass out one day because your blood pressure went too low, right? You want to do it slowly and in a controlled manner with medical guidance so you can keep an eye on things. And there are contraindications for some herbs in combination with some medications. An example would be if somebody is taking Coumadin, you're not supposed to have ashwagandha with that. It can be
Yes.
problematic. And so, yeah, it's going to be on a very individual basis based on the drug, based on what herbs we're looking at potentially consuming. But if somebody has a serious health condition or they're taking medications, you do need to look at everything that you're consuming, and make sure it's going to be supportive of your health as your reality is modified by this drug and not throwing you into an out of balance situation.
Oh, well said. Yeah, that's great. No, I agree, because I think sometimes when we think natural, oh, it's natural. That doesn't necessarily mean that it's not going to be there's not going to be some kind of contraindication. It just really depends. Like you said, it's so bio individual, and it depends on everyone's like experience, or excuse me, everyone's circumstance and what they're doing, and what season of life they're in, what they're taking, what they are consuming in general. So, and I would assume if someone was really, really wondering, if they reached out, say to your company, would you guys be able to sort of point them in the right direction? Like if they were
We can
purchasing?
provide guidance to a
Mm-hmm.
certain level.
Okay.
In certain situations, we'll often say you have to speak with your doctor because
Yeah.
we're not doctors and we can't provide individual medical guidance. But usually we can also point you in the direction of how to find a functional medicine doctor who will have pharmaceutical knowledge combined with herbal knowledge and can really see both worlds and bring it together for you.
Perfect. So, unless there's anything else that you want to touch on in regards to the chocolate, I just wanted to quickly mention that it's not the only thing that you guys have to offer, and it's not the only thing that you regularly consume too, because you guys also sell adaptogens and cacao and all of that. So, can you just give us like a quick summary on what else you have, and also, do you have a favorite? I'm so curious to know. Besides the tranquility, because I know that we
Okay,
know
so
that you love the
tranquility
tranquility.
is number one. The rest, it's like picking your favorite child. It really depends on what I'm going through health wise, what my day looks like. If I have a very cognitively intense day, or like for example, I love learning languages. Right now, I'm studying Hungarian. If I
Ooh,
have a Hungarian lesson coming up with my tutor, I'm taking focus chocolate because it's a very difficult language. I need all my brain power for this. If I'm a focus is working on my skin health, I go for beauty chocolate. If my partner and I are going to have a romantic evening, okay, love chocolate
yeah,
naturally.
yeah,
And so if I've been burning the candle at both ends a little bit too much, then I go for a recharged chocolate. So it all depends if I'm feeling immunologically vulnerable or just want to participate in a long-term strategy of immune support and building the intelligence of my immune system, then it's immunity chocolate. And it's a great blessing that I have to be part of my job is taste testing chocolate. So
Yeah,
it
I was
could be a
gonna
lot
say,
worse.
lucky you, lucky you.
Yeah.
That's
And
awesome.
so um, to your question about the other products, yeah. So when we first started, we were just making the chocolates, and we had incredible sources for all these things because sourcing has been a huge passion of mine for almost 20 years now. And I would educate people a lot about these ingredients that we were using and about where we're getting these from and how amazing they are. And they would say, "Oh, I'd love to try just astragalus on its own, or I want to find a good cacao powder for my smoothies or whatever I do. Where do you recommend?" And I was in a weird situation there because I could point them in the direction of some other companies that I had used many years ago. But for so long, I had just been consuming what I've been importing because I found it to be the highest quality. And so I felt weird about recommending something to someone that I hadn't consumed from that brand in many years. So I can't attest firsthand to the maintenance of quality over time because with some companies, these things change, they get bought out, they get sold, who knows? And so I was like, well, we have these ingredients, we're already importing them. Why don't we just take that next step and start making them available for people? So we started offering our cacao powder and our different adaptogenic extracts and cacao nibs. And so if people want to have it in a bar of chocolate, they can do that. If they want to play around with them individually, start adding them to different drinks or different food creations, they can go that route. And we also created a line called the Elixir Blends. And this is basically hot or cold drink mixes where you just take a spoonful, mix it, blend it with a cup of hot or cold almond milk or coconut milk or whatever you like. And it's designed to create that ultimate beverage experience. So,
Ooh.
and I formulated these all based on like different past memories. So for me, the hot chocolate was based on when I used to go skiing with my dad when I was a kid, and I would come into the lodge at the end of the day with my frozen little fingers and would hold them around this mug of hot chocolate that you would get from the lodge there, and just it would be too hot to drink, but you would just be inhaling it, and eventually you could sip on it. And so that's kind of like I reached back into my memory to formulate these based on different past experiences. But
Wow.
so we have a cacao, chai, matcha, and caramel. So it's a great way to consume these powerful adaptogens in that way as well. So it's got the creaminess, the sweetness, it's all in there. And so I kind of wanted to make the ultimate tonic elixir in a foolproof way that you can make in a matter of a minute or so.
Awesome. I love that. I love that. And I do have your cacao powder now as well. And I was so excited about that because I like making my own hot chocolate now naturally. I don't buy like the sugary mixes. I prefer to do it and like froth my own whatever milk I'm using. Sometimes I do raw cream and stuff like that with like a little
Mm-hmm.
bit of maple syrup, and it's
Yeah.
amazing. It's better than any hot chocolate that I'll ever get, even at like a local coffee shop, you know? So I
Oh,
can't
I'm so
wait to
glad.
do that.
That's great. Yeah, yeah. I hope you really enjoy it.
Yeah, no, I am very excited. I'm telling you, I am passionate about chocolate, and I always have been. I mean, even if my mom was sitting here next to me right now, she'd be like, "The girl has always liked chocolate." But I will say, never milk. Like, well, no, I take it back. I lied. I would eat milk chocolate as more of a kid and a teenager because I think my palate was also different. But when I should say, like graduated into adulthood and then also started cleaning up my act when it came to my health because I had to, I was actually forced to, things changed for me. And so now I don't enjoy milk chocolate at all. I really don't. I like the dark, more so the bitter, and stuff like
Same for
that.
me as a kid. It was only milk chocolate. And then as I started getting healthier, by the time I came back to chocolate and just rediscovered it, I only had an interest in dark, and it was all I
Yeah.
could ever want. It
Yeah.
my inner terrain and my taste changed over that time, and it's perfect.
Isn't it wild? And not just with chocolate, you guys. I feel like, this is applicable to so many things. How once you really start to clean up your health, you start paying attention to, your gut, your liver, everything really, your palate changes. And so the Snickers bar that you might have enjoyed at 25 might be like actual kind of, I don't know, maybe it tastes like trash to you now at your 30, in your 35, right? It's just so crazy how that works. And I have had that experience with so many things, like so much of the junk food that I used to eat. I'm not even like, oh, I miss that. No, I don't miss it at all. I don't want it.
Right.
I don't want it.
Yeah, you lose the craving and the different
Yeah.
elements of your physiology, whether it's just your state of health or your low energy levels or parasites that influence your cravings and desires may not be there anymore. And so it's coming from more of a pure place of seeking out what's really going to fuel you the best.
Beautifully said. That's so true. And again, my experience. So, as we tie up our show here, this episode has been so fun. I've genuinely really enjoyed this. This has been
So have I.
really
So have I.
fun.
Thank
Yeah,
you.
I
Thank you
it's
so
been
much.
such a pleasure. Is there anything that you want to leave our listeners with in terms of like just longevity in general? I mean, it doesn't necessarily have to be chocolate related or even with adaptogens. I mean, it could really be anything that comes to your mind. Because I feel like at the end of the day, the message here is always, you guys can do what you would like with this information. And it's about awareness and mindfulness and not about like, just implementing a million things and, getting all stressed out about health. And so if there was like one takeaway that you've had just through your experiences, what would you say?
To kind of go off what you just said, don't get stressed about health. Stress is not a part of a longevity strategy when we're talking about chronic stress. So don't get too overwhelmed by it. If you feel it overwhelming you, just take a breath and step back and come back at it the next day with a fresh mind and say, what is sustainable for me to incorporate? You don't have to overhaul your entire life, your diet, and your lifestyle all at once. Take it one step at a time. Do a new thing until it just becomes normal routine for you. Then change something else. So maybe you add in a chocolate bar. It tends to be one of the easiest things to add in. There's very little resistance generally to that.
Right.
Then maybe you add one adaptogen that you found interesting, and maybe it's like you really want to protect long-term breast health and support immune health, and you like turkey tail, and you mix that with hot water and drink that as a tea during the day or in the morning whenever it works with your schedule, and that just becomes a regular thing. And as you add in new regular activities like this, they tend to crowd out the bad things. So don't take a negative angle on it and say, I have to stop this, I have to stop this, I have to stop this, I can't have this, I can't have this. Focus on the positive, add in new, cool, fun, and overall life supportive things. And the bad ones, they just naturally fall away. You didn't have to try to stop liking milk chocolate. You don't have to say, I can't have milk chocolate anymore. It just fell away.
Yeah.
And that can happen with everything.
That's so true. Beautiful. Just absolutely wonderfully said. And such an important takeaway for all of us, you guys. I mean, myself included, because I think even just being in this spot, right? Like, interviewing and being so invested in numerous topics and really, breaking things down in detail with so many different people. I'll be honest, like I have to also approach this work with balance because it can be overwhelming. And so it is so important to just always take a breath, take a step back, and you said the word sustainable sustainability. Take one or two things and make them your deal, right, until they become regular, and then maybe do something else down the line. But to put everything in the basket all at once, it's just not sustainable, and it's going to create more stress, and that's more toxic to you than whatever that you're trying to avoid in the first place, right? It's like you don't want to be so stressed out with your health that it becomes just this unhealthy, unproductive circumstance for you. So I wholeheartedly agree
Yeah,
with
you
what
can
you
think
said.
about it like when you go shopping. You don't feel necessarily compelled to get one of every single item in the store and put it all in your cart. You just wouldn't have room in your cart, first of all. But
No.
whether it's clothes shopping or food shopping, you don't need to get everything. Just figure out what's going to work for you, and you take it, one at a time at a sustainable rate. You don't try to put 500 pounds of food in your shopping cart.
So true. That's a good. You have some good analogies, by
Oh,
the way.
thank you.
I'm an analogy person, and I'm taking note of these analogies. So I just,
Oh,
I
that's so sweet.
really
I
do.
love a good analogy
I
too.
love a good analogy. I just said that the other day too. I don't know what conversation I was having, but I'm like, I always feel like I'm talking in analogies, and I don't know if that's annoying or not, but I love it.
I'm glad, but I'm glad you do because it's my way.
It's perfect. It's a great way to learn. It's a great way to learn. So, in terms of resources, where people can find you, websites, social media, and so forth, where's the best way or the best ways to learn more about you, more about addictive wellness, and so forth?
If you're interested in trying some of the things that we make and put so much love into, our website is addictivewellness.com. And that's IVE at the end of addictive. Although we did get the URL addictedwellness.com just in case somebody puts in the wrong thing. It'll still get you to our website
Oh,
anyways.
good.
And then we share a lot of educational information. So if you've enjoyed any of this and want to hear me talk more about it, then you can go on our Instagram, Addictive Wellness, Facebook, Addictive Wellness, or YouTube is where we put out the most, especially more longer form, deep dive educational videos as well. So would love for you to connect with us on those platforms and for us to continue the journey together.
Awesome. I'll have to find you on YouTube because I am following you guys on Instagram. And you're right. You guys, you do show your face a lot, and you often speak to the audience, and I love that. Again, it's like to see the owner and to just hear from you directly. It's in just with the informational content that you guys push out. I highly recommend you guys find Sage and Addictive Wellness on social media. And also, he's been kind enough to give our listeners a code if you do want to try something out. This will be you guys in the show notes. As always, you know that my show notes are very thorough, so you can check it out. But it is Well with Vanessa, I believe. And that's going to be for 10% off. But again, that's a really sweet. Thank you for doing that for our friends. I appreciate
Of
it so
course,
much.
my
Yeah,
pleasure, my
that's
pleasure.
awesome. That's awesome. And again, everything that he said in terms of where you can find him and the company will be all in the show notes for you. It has been a pleasure. Like I said, this has been so fun.
I've enjoyed
And
it so much as well. Thank
yeah,
you really
just
for
in
having me on.
every way. It's really just been such a not only an informational episode where I've learned several things, but you've just been such a joy to talk to, and you really are in multiple ways just kind of just a beam of light. So you
Thank
just
you.
come across with so much joy and really just genuine. I don't know. You just are so genuine, and there's so much inspiration behind what you're doing. And I can tell that you really just want to impact people positively. So thank you so much for doing what you're doing.
My pleasure. And thank you so much for all your kindness and support.
Oh, anytime. All right, my friend. Well, you have a beautiful day, and we will talk soon.
Thank you. Have a great day.
Thank you.